It was their security guard who said where they were going, right? And as soon as he's about to say where...
It was the security driver who spoke, the one person no one expected to say anything at all. And the moment he hinted at destinations never meant to be known, something inside Harry began to change, not all at once, but slowly, like heat building beneath the skin. Because this time it wasn't gossip or distant noise. It was someone he recognized, someone who had been there for years. Someone who had seen moments Harry never knew existed, no lenses, no flashes, just quiet movements meant to leave. No trace. And when the man said it was all done carefully, quietly, under the radar, that single line shattered the calm. He described being surrounded by cameras on one night, flashes from every direction, chaos erupting where there was supposed to be none, words spoken casually during a low-profile interview that exploded across the internet within minutes, not because they were dramatic, but because they were precise. The driver spoke of routes deliberately altered, tracking systems disabled, late calls, sudden changes, places that were never logged or spoken of again, always explained as safety, yet safety that required secrecy even from a husband. He said he was dismissed after asking questions, years erased in a single call, and before the interview ended, he left a warning hanging in the air, one that needed no explanation. Not long after, inside the quiet of a sprawling home, everything unraveled. Harry's restraint collapsed, his anger breaking through walls no one dared cross. The same question echoing again and again, not meant for the world, but for the person closest to him. When he finally confronted her, the room felt suspended in time, a screen glowing silently with the interview. Explanations offered softly, carefully, framed as private work and misunderstood intentions. But the details didn't align, and when questions sharpened, the response shifted. Concern turning into accusation, doubt reframed as betrayal, a familiar pattern that had once worked but no longer held. Later, alone, Harry began checking timelines, schedules, logs, noticing gaps that shouldn't exist, moments erased, layers rewritten, so often the truth blurred beneath them. And that was when he chose to look deeper, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Whispers followed, not loud at first, but persistent, neighbors recalling late departures, chance encounters remembered too clearly, quiet exchanges that avoided attention, until one image appeared without context and spread on its own, not dramatic, just deliberate, a moment that raised more questions than it answered. And when Harry saw it, he didn't react outwardly, he went still, because stillness meant certainty. That night he didn't sleep, replaying every dismissal. Every time he'd been told he was imagining things, realizing whatever had been happening wasn't careless, it was planned. By morning, resolve replaced confusion. The investigator spoke plainly, noting patterns that didn't exist without reason, connections that lived in the margins, old networks, familiar names that never appeared openly. And when one name surfaced repeatedly, it made too many unanswered moments suddenly make sense. Harry asked directly later, not with anger, but with calm, and the hesitation he received told him everything words refused to say. Over the following days, people who had once stayed silent began remembering details they could no longer ignore, schedules adjusted, security shifted, absences that aligned too neatly to be coincidence, still nothing definitive, but together impossible to dismiss. Harry withdrew, stopped defending, stopped explaining, and that silence spoke louder than any statement ever could. Then came a call from the past, a voice that carried no comfort, only caution, reminding him that some truths reshape more than relationships. When the line went dead, Harry understood the cost of what he was uncovering, not just secrets, but the slow loss of trust in himself. The final moment came quietly. She was gone when he woke, no message, only distance, and in that absence, without arguments or explanations, the truth settled in fully. It was never about one revelation or one moment. It was about realizing he had always been the last to know. And once that understanding takes hold, it doesn't just change how you see a partnership. It changes how you see your entire life. The silence that followed didn't bring peace. It brought clarity, the kind that settles in slowly and refuses to leave. And as the hours passed, Harry realized the noise had finally stopped, not outside, but inside his own head. For the first time in years, there was no one explaining his doubts away, no one reframing his instincts as weakness, and in that quiet he began to see how carefully his world had been shaped for him. Messages went unanswered, familiar voices stayed distant, and the absence of reassurance felt strange at first, then freeing. He walked through the house, noticing details he'd never questioned before, rooms that felt staged rather than lived in, schedules that revolved around appearances instead of honesty, conversations that always ended just before real answers began. The investigator continued working quietly, not chasing drama, just following patterns. And each update confirmed the same truth again and again. This wasn't chaos, it was control. Harry stopped reacting and started observing, letting people reveal themselves through what they avoided rather than what they said. Friends who once checked in daily grew cautious. Others suddenly resurfaced with concern that felt rehearsed. And he understood then how isolation doesn't happen all at once. It's built piece by piece until you forget what normal feels like. Across the ocean, whispers grew louder, not because anyone spoke directly, but because silence itself became impossible to ignore. No statements, no explanations, just distance. And that distance forced everyone to fill in the gaps themselves. Harry didn't rush to correct the narrative, because for once the narrative wasn't being written for him. He spent time alone, not hiding, just recalibrating, reconnecting with memories that had been pushed aside, moments where his instincts had been right long before doubt was taught into him. Calls came from places he hadn't heard from in years, some offering concern, others offering warnings disguised as advice, and with each one he felt the last threads of obligation loosen. Whatever had been protected so carefully was no longer his burden to carry. He understood now that loyalty without truth isn't loyalty at all, it's submission, and love that demands blindness isn't love, it's control. When he finally stepped forward again, it wasn't with anger or accusation, but with something far more unsettling, certainty. He didn't need answers anymore to move forward, because the absence of them had already given him the truth. He had spent years defending a version of reality that never fully belonged to him, and now, standing on the other side of that realization, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: autonomy. Whatever came next would be decided with open eyes, not fear, not obligation, and not silence. The story everyone thought they knew was never the real one, and for the first time, Harry wasn't trying to protect it. He was finally ready to live beyond it.